Okay, so we're here. I'm Laura Jane, and I'm here with my friend Jonathan Neal. And you also go by Jai,
Yeah,
correct?
Jai or Jai Jai. Yeah,
Jai
almost.
Jai? You say it
Yeah,
twice, Jai Jai? Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, so I want to honor that too, because I know a lot of people know you by that name and maybe not even Jonathan, I think, right?
Yeah, well, I got people that know me by all kinds of different names, depending on where they met me. So,
Yeah,
but
so thank you for being here. And
thanks
I
for having me.
always love having conversations with you and doing this kind of thing with you, but I knew, especially at this time during the dealing with the coronavirus and the stay at home pandemic stuff,
Yeah,
yeah, just I thought it would be really helpful for whoever tunes in to hear from you and what comes through in our conversation about, yeah, what's going on and how you're feeling, how you're dealing. Are you officially not surfing now? That's
yeah,
my first official question, because I know that's one of your favorite things, and they've closed the beaches near us. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, they've closed a lot of different beaches, and Orange County still has some beaches open, but they're closing some of the
Okay.
parking lots to try to keep. But I mean, it's still there's still a lot of people out there, but I'm not really, I haven't really been surfing in a little over a week. Like I kind of just, for me, it's like, yeah, I love doing it, but I'm trying to, I mean, this stuff is more important and we got to get this going. And the sooner that we, sooner that we start to flatten that curve and actually take the action, the sooner we can get back out there. So,
Yeah.
and also, it's helped by the fact that spring is not really known as the best time for surfing in California. We usually
Ah.
don't get a lot of swell, and I mean, if you've noticed, it's just been super windy and rainy, and
Mm.
I mean, so the water's already kind of dirty from all the rain that we've been getting, and the wind isn't really doing any favor for the waves, and we don't really have. I mean, I actually even woke up this morning and kind of like peeked at the camera, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just sneak out, but I mean, it's small, it's windy, so it hasn't been, you know, I haven't
Ah.
been confronted with like, oh my God, it looks great, and I'm stuck inside yet, so we'll see how that goes. But
Yes,
so far,
yes.
it's been like I wouldn't even go out. I wouldn't even. I'd go back to bed either way. So so it hasn't been that
Yeah.
bad. But I think it's something that
But
I mean,
that's
like
one of your,
that's. But that's I mean, that's a big thing to me. But these are still these are these things will be there when we get back, and to be impatient and to be like, oh, I have to go out and do it anyway is just like I mean, it's a couple months and you'll be back out of the course of your whole life. It's fine. And I
mm,
found that actually taking those break like when we have those breaks when we come back to it we appreciate it more. And I mean, I've had times where like I was sick or I was injured and I couldn't really surf for a couple weeks or a month, and like
mm,
you get that original kind of like beginner stoke when you go back again that sometimes can,
um,
when you surf like every day and you're out there all the time, like you can kind of it's like if all you ever eat is ice cream, it doesn't taste sweet anymore, right?
yeah.
So, and you start to hate it. So for me, it's like great time to take a break, do some other stuff, and when I eventually get back out there, it's going to be 10 times radder than it ever was. So
I
you know,
love that. You've got your eye on the beginner's stoke that you're going to have when you
yeah,
get back to it. So, but that's a
after you
really
learn how to
cool
do it
place
too.
to start. Yeah, because I know you've been, I've felt like being really a thought leader, like usual, in this time, though, in some of your posts and such, about how it is about our mindset and our approach. But yet, I love that you're also very practical and you're willing and have that very connected approach and things like you're willing to give up your surfing, right,
Yeah.
to serve the collective. So,
Well,
mm,
I think it's important for I think that I mean, to me, there's several things. Like one, we don't want to minimize things. We don't want to be running around being like, oh, it's all just love and light, and none of this. Like we gotta recognize that there's an actual thing that is actually a threat, and is causing some trouble, and so we have to be aware of that. But I mean, panic doesn't help. So it's like we have to be aware of the trouble, but we also have to I mean, this is a big deal, but it's like any other small deal in our lives. First thing is to identify it, to recognize it for what it is, and then just to practically find strategies that we're going to use around it. And, first of all, what are we physically going to do? Like, I'm going to stay in, You know, I mean, right at this point for almost a week or more now, I've been only going out to go to the store when I need to. And, but you know, that doesn't have to mean like there's the way I look at it is there's a golden mean, there's a middle where we're not being flippant about it and we're not panicking about it, but we're aware, present, and taking action. And that's really
Mm.
what I try to encourage. You know, when we talk about like posts and stuff, like to me, it's just, you know, finding that golden mean, finding that golden average where we're not underdoing it, we're not overdoing it, but we're doing the right thing, and we're taking actions based upon, you know, data and research, and not based upon conspiracies and hearsay. You know, we actually have
Mm.
to look at what's happening and soberly approach this if we're going to have any success, because you know, I mean, that's how any problem gets solved. But you know, especially when you're dealing with something so big and so widespread, you can't just be flopping around and hoping that you get there. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, it takes some real, you know. So you know, I think that being aware, but then keeping ourselves centered, keeping ourselves focused on, you know, not falling into despair, not getting too hopeful, but what is the next thing that I can do? What's the next right step? You know, and then
Ah,
just one step at a time. Just, you know, what can I do right now? What can't I do? What's beyond my
ah,
control?
yeah.
And to set aside, you know, I mean, what's beyond my control is beyond my control. But
Yeah.
that, you know, if I focus on that, then I lose my time and my energy and my opportunity to focus on the, even if it's just little things that I can do. And so
Uh,
that's really my call to myself and to everybody, is to, you know, be aware, but don't absorb tons of energy into the things that you can't do anything about,
ah,
but focus that energy into like, what can I actually do? How can I actually help myself and help my community? And how are we actually going to get through this thing? And what little thing can I do today? And
wow.
it might be nothing. You know, I mean, the little thing that you might do today would be just, I'm just going to sit in instead of running around, which
Uh,
is, you know, I mean, we've got the easiest deal in history, you know, as far as
right.
big events,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
you look at
As far
like
as our
world wars and
actual
stuff like
experience.
that. Like our
Hmm.
job is not to go get in a boat and go over to some other country and shoot guns at each other. Our job is to sit in our house. So yeah, I mean, I have to not surf, but we're doing, it's, you know, it's not the worst generational, you know, calamity that's ever happened, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
you know, we just
Wow.
do the practical things we could do today, and you know, just focus on how we can stay connected as well. And I think that's another thing is,
Uh,
you know, if we absorb ourselves into all this other stuff, like we're worried about what we can't control, then we either don't connect with other people, or we have, you know, that transfers into like a negative impact on other people and, you know, the people we interact with.
ah.
You know, if we
Ah.
get ourselves in a bad attitude and a bad mood by, you know, reading about all this stuff that's upsetting us, then when we turn around and go back to engaging with our friends and our family and other people, then, you know, that can rub off. And, you know, that's the
Yeah.
last thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really good point. Yeah, that it is gonna rub off and be felt by those around us. Well, and I love that some of what I feel like you're talking about is such really, and because you're such a yoga leader in the community and teacher and such, and
Never knew.
but I love that how much you really do teach, and I feel like live yoga, and just what I feel like you were sharing some of these ideas, like where we're going to put our energy and how we're going to use our energy, right? That's such a yoga
Yes.
concept that we learn, right? That you and I know after many years in it. And then also that making it about connection, right?
Yeah.
Like staying connected, because that's right. If yoga means union and connect. So I love that these like yoga principles, you're someone who so like walks your talk and it
Well,
just
I
comes
mean,
through in how
it's
you
you know,
describe
it's
the
finding
approach.
that kind of that, you know, one of the main principles to me in physical yoga practice and just in general is always about finding that right amount. There's a right amount of everything, you know,
Ah,
and being mindful. And that's part of the, you know, for me, that's one of the reasons I practice yoga every day a little bit, is to keep the mind clear enough that I can actually see that, you know, like what is the right amount of this? You know, I mean, like if I'm in a yoga pose, I might be stretching too hard, right? I mean, I can go too far, and I can
yeah.
also go not far enough where I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm too floppy. And there's
Mm.
that right amount in the middle that we want to find, where I can still breathe and I can feel it. And to me, this is when we talk about taking the yoga practice off of the mat and into the world. that's really the practical application. If I can find it within my own body and breath, that golden mean, that middle,
Mm.
that Goldilocks zone, if you will, not too hot, not too cold, but just right? If I can
Yeah,
find that in
the
the pose
Goldilocks.
and in my practice, or even in my breath practice, or whatever I'm doing,
Oh,
then I can start to take that knowledge and that experience out into my everyday life. And of
uh,
course, that's where it actually, I mean, like, it's great to be calm and centered on your mat, but if you step
yes.
off and you're frazzled again, then, you lose it. So we got to take it. I mean, there's no point in doing any philosophical or any yoga training or any of this stuff if we're not going to actually put it into action. I mean,
Right.
knowledge without action is as good as not having it. As good
Uh,
as not knowing if you're not going to do.
yeah. 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 And I love now more and more people I think are realizing that when you practice it, say on the mat, it's so that you can bring it back
Yeah.
to your people, or it's so that you do come back refreshed and different and better.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
why I try to encourage people not, when you're practicing yoga, like there's such a focus on the pose. Like I'm trying to get into the pose. And if that's what we're trying to do, then we're not paying attention to finding that Goldilocks zone. We're just pushing as far, as hard as we can. And that's always too much. As much as you possibly can is always too much. So, and again, it just robs our focus. And like you said, like the whole point of doing the practice is to not to get into some shape, but to know yourself, to gain not
Uh,
even necessarily control, but the ability to recognize again that right amount in each moment. And if that's
yeah.
not our focus in our practice, then we're not practicing that and we're not going to develop that. And that's why, so many people one person does yoga and another one does it, and one gets that practical advantage out of it, and the other one just, gets more flexible. And, to me, it's like, what are you actually practicing when you're on your mat? Are you practicing stretching, or are you practicing mindfulness and finding the right level? And so that's super important to me. And, as far as for anyone doing yoga, anyone out there that practices or is going to start practicing to just remember that, it isn't about the pose. It's not about you getting into the shape. It's about being present and finding that right, like really feeling that out. Because then again, you could take that outside into your actual life and start to do that again. Now
Yeah.
I can take the right action in this scenario and this whole coronavirus and all this stuff. Now I'm
Yeah.
equipped with that ability, and that's going to be not only helpful to me, but again, helpful to everyone around me because I can stay able to take the right action. So
Yeah.
that's the point of the yoga in my mind. And that's why I always say, like, this is not a time that anyone would have asked for, but this is literally the time that we've ideally been training for.
Yes.
And these are the
Yes.
kind of scenarios that, I mean, if we read like the Bhagavad Gita, like that's the story is two armies facing each other. And, I mean, so it's a battle like we're facing now. It's a big
Yes.
deal. And that's when the yoga comes in. That's when the yoga is
Um,
June. And,
ooh.
so that's kind of the point is that if our yoga doesn't help us in these big emergencies and those big battles, like in the Gita, then
Mm.
is it really yoga would be my question.
Uh,
So we need to be, I just think that it's important that we understand, like, what am I actually practicing? Because that
ooh.
can really, really drastically change the result of
Yeah.
what we get out of it.
Well, and that's such a great way to approach right now, like to see how right now is a time that we're practicing and to ask ourselves, what am I actually practicing, right, with how we're responding? And it's such a beautiful way to see, yeah, bring it to like right now can be, we can see it as a part of our practice, like you said, and even what we've been almost asking for and preparing for and ready for, and part of
Absolutely.
our like character
Well, and it is
development.
practice. I mean, it is practice. Like it's this practical practice, right? It's the actual. This is, I mean, I look at it like this. Like the yoga we do on our mat is like training that we might do in the gym. It gets us conditioned, but then there's the actual game. I actually get out in the field and play some soccer, play some football or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Or I go out and I go surfing.
Um,
And so there's, but that itself is its own kind of workout, right? That itself is its own kind of training, like actually playing the game. So in the
right.
same way, it's like I do my yoga on my mat, and then when there are situations like this, or even smaller emergencies,
Yeah.
that's a chance to use what I learned on my mat, but also to practice, still practicing, still learning. Like the athlete is still getting more athletic when he's out on the field just because he's not in the gym. We're still we can look at it both as our opportunity to put into practice what we learned and to further our practice through the actual practicing in the actual real world.
Yes. It's like we're in the game right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like all that
Though
other
game
stuff
is a
before
weird
was
word.
just setting up your character, and now here we go. You know, now we're in the actual game.
Right, we're in the actual game. And I have a question for you, because you referred to with the Bhagavad Gita having
Yeah.
the armies, and this idea of two forces against each other. And because how much do you feel like there is this truth that there may be like two forces within us that we are often battling with, and maybe that's some of what is going on right now? You know, maybe it's like the fear versus love, or good versus evil, or two forces in the world. Or, I mean, what's your take on that whole thing? And do you think that's like at all relevant to what is happening right now within us or around us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always relevant. And I mean, the way I look at it is the wave function. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that there's two forces.
Yeah.
You know, there's one force, if we will. You know, there's only one thing, right? But what it does do is it does wave, right? So there's always crests and troughs. Everything that we find, I mean, all matter that we talk about is we could reduce down into waves. In fact, they've shown that you can actually reduce the whole universe into one wave, which is why it's called the universe. It's the one song, because it is, you know, and a lot of this comes from a lot of you know, Hindu mythology and other places, and a lot of mythology actually talks about like there being one sound. So to me, it's not that there's like a combat between good and evil or two opposing forces. Really, what it is I mean, we really this is all perspective, right? Like I could look at that up and down and be like, this is a battle, right? Or I could look at it and be like, this is a dance. Like the tide rolls in, the tide rolls out. Things come up, things come down. Everything is flexing, everything is waving. And so to me, it's really just a choice. Like, am I watching this and being like, wow, this is a real battle, or is this a dance? Like the traditional symbol of what we talk about here is, of course, the yin yang symbol. And, you know, you could look at that. I had someone describe it to me. He's like, you know, it's two fish. It's like two koi fish, basically, right? And he said, you know, you could look at that and say that they're chasing and trying to eat each other, or you could look at that and say that they're dancing together. And there's really no objective one or the other, right? So it's really just going to come down to perspective. But that being said, what I would say is that there's one force. It's always flexing. And, you know, if you're at the peak of that wave, things look different than if you're at the bottom of the wave. But it's all one wave. And, you know, to assume that, you know, we can look back through history and see that this same thing has happened over and over again. Different names, different faces, different structures, different technology levels, different responses. But this isn't the first, you know, pandemic. This isn't the first plague. This isn't the first time that we've had, you know, corruption, and at the same time we've had people being great. You know, we've had people that are very helpful that are out there. We have people that are corrupt that are, you know, this is the human story of all time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, in the moment, I feel like it's like there's this fight, but if we actually look back through history, we realize that it's always up and down. And depending on where you are on that wave, it could be it might feel like, you know, if you're at the sharp decline point of that wave, then you're like, wow, this is a real roller coaster ride, right? And if you're coming back up, then you might be like, wow, what a jet plane, you know, now we're flying up, right? So
yeah, right.
But at the end, you know, and this is, I mean, these are the same things that we find in the Gita and all these other things, is that, you know, we can experience that, and we can either enjoy or not enjoy if it's something that's, you know, bad. But it is one wave. The apparent duality is still just crest and trough of one thing. And I think that that's just something that's comforting and important, you know, for me to remember, and good to remember that, you know, while we still, again, want to take right action, we want to do the right thing, we don't have to, you know, be existentially worried, because this is, you know, It's all within the one life.
Mm. What do you mean by that? You like, or within, you mean like the one, like the possibilities of one life within, like going
Well, I'm
along with the
talking
way
more about
you
like
think?
all of the universe, like everything that we can see and imagine is
Yeah.
all one living organism, if we will.
Um,
And all the
um,
differentiation, like we think, well, I'm a human, and then there's a chicken over there, and then there's a tree over there, and we understand that in our brain. Our brain dissects the universe and the world into these different parts. But when we look scientifically and we look at the actual data, like it's really just one endless
uh,
quantum field, and all
uh,
those differentiations are established within the mind. All the walls, all the barriers are so objectively, and that's why I say this isn't something that is in yoga and it is in mythology, but when we, as it has been doing much lately, like mythology and science have come together in this way that we've found that it really is true that there really is one life, so to speak, and all of that, that there
mm,
is one field, and that inside the quantum field, there's no actual differentiation. I mean, this is why one thing can die, decompose, and then come. We see it happening, right? And then like new
mm,
stuff grows out of that. So, and for me, that's comforting just because it's, to remember that although my experience is that there's all these forces and all these individuals fighting and crying, that's all sort of bubbling up
uh,
within the one life.
wow. Yes. It's all one. Like it's really, yeah. And that's where you seem so, and you, like throughout my interactions with you, you seem so grounded in that feeling of oneness a lot of the time. And so, so I'm just fine. I want to ask again, like currently, what are some things that you feel like are helping you, that you use each day, or that you're reading or listening to, or that are part of that, like being so grounded and ready to teach from there too? Because you teach a lot too, and so I know each day you're working with people, groups, and individuals, and so it's
Yeah,
like I'm just always wanting to know, like, ooh, what do you feel in that with these days?
absolutely. Well, and I think that's helpful, I mean, because I think that's a lot of, now that we all have all this time, and at the same time we have a lot of like stress coming at us through the media and, all that stuff. Like, what do we do
Yeah.
to, what do we actually do now that we're here? And, there's a couple things that I'll just, I don't know what's right for everyone, obviously, but I'll just share what I do because
Yeah.
that's what you asked. So, I mean, one of the key things, I mean, number one, of course, I mean, yoga, do your yoga. And it doesn't, again, not complicated, not trying to get into shapes, but just do your yoga, breathe and move a little bit. A lot of what I'm doing now is not even necessarily, I mean, it's just like I'll start with some simple moving, simple posing and
Hmm.
breathing. And then it really, in this time, especially this time to also allow yourself to be a little free form, to just be on the
Yeah.
mat, you're in your own room and you're not in the classroom. There's no set schedule to the class. And you can just kind of wiggle. You can just kind of move.
Yeah.
You can just kind of take your time,
Right.
do weird shapes, but
Yeah.
having that, one of the biggest things is whatever it is, whether it's the regimented shapes or the more creative flow, whatever, you got to be in your body and you got to be connected to your own life first. I mean, if I'm not, and you can feel this, like you sit on your phone and look at the Insta and look at the Facebook and get agitated and then go do, some breath and some movement, and you'll feel that literally your awareness starts to pull back in, starts to come back in, especially if we're practicing in that right way. And now your mind is settled on the breath and the body.
Mm.
The mind that's settled on the breath and the body, it at least gets a momentary reprieve from being settled on all the drama, right?
Mm.
So, and if we practice every day and we practice a little bit every day, and especially if we're feeling stressed, just get up and do a little bit, then it starts to have a more cumulative effect where, like, even if I'm not in practice, I can encounter some of that information and still stay in my body. So
Yes.
like, do your yoga is always number one. I mean, you gotta, especially, I mean, again, like we're being pulled out into the mind world so much by all this stuff that's going on that we have to come back to that body. Second of all, I
Mm.
mean, that's just physically good for you. So, take care of yourself because, if any of us do get sick, then we want to be as healthy as we possibly can. The other thing that's really instrumental and really just been key to me in the last couple of years, but especially, during this time, has been journaling. And
Yeah.
I do two forms of journaling really. One of them is more like I have like a series of kind of bullet points or prompts that I've
Mhm.
chosen for myself, um, that I basically just, I'll go through and I'll just fill those out. And then I also do, especially now, this is kind of new because I have all this extra time. I do
Yeah.
that in the morning, like just to kind of like set my mind in the direction I want to set it.
Uh-huh.
And, but then, later on, maybe I'll get and just actually sit and write something, just write
Yeah.
sentences and words. Like I actually just write whatever I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
that to me is more like, I don't want to sit down and force that. Like if I feel like I
Uh-huh.
have something welling up, then I'll do that kind. But the other kind is like more of like my morning routine. I wake up,
Mhm.
get my coffee making, do a little yoga, get my coffee, um, sit down and journal with that and do my bullet
Uh-huh.
points. And, I mean, that's just in the same way that like the physical practice brings us into our body. I feel like that journaling practice brings us back into that clarity state. Our mind's not bouncing all over the place. We can start to focus on it. Gives us a little time to actually think about all this information that's coming in, to start to organize that a bit and start to sort out and find again that golden mean. Like, what are the stuff that I saw on YouTube yesterday is legit, and what of it really it was like maybe just a little scared by, but it's probably a bunch of bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah.
because there's a ton of that going on. So to have that journaling time, that time to sit down and process, like a little bit process on paper, like what am I taking in, and what of that is of value, and what of that can I discard?
Mm-hmm.
That's really important for me. And then just exercise. I mean, just besides the yoga, like getting out and exercising. I mean, like I
Uh-huh.
can be so stressed out. I can be buried in my phone, so stressed out about the fate of the world and how everyone's doing the wrong thing and this and that. And then I just go out, out back or even here right in my room and just, start moving, start doing, just pick a couple little exercises and start doing those. And, it's amazing how much better you feel,
Uh,
especially considering like it gives you something it gives you something more eminent to worry about. You can't be worried about
uh-huh.
what's happening out there because you're worried about your burning legs. You're worried about like, ah, you're here now with actual life, which is breathing and moving through you. So
Yeah.
whether it's yoga, I mean, doing the yoga, doing the mindful yoga, doing the exercise, and again, it's healthy for you. We need that. We physically need that as well. So those,
Yeah.
I mean, those are probably the main. And then also, the last thing I would say is, um, using this time to cook and make better food.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like for me being a busy drive around guy before this, it was like there's times where a bar is going to be is going to be what you eat. You get a protein bar. You don't get a
Yeah.
chance to sit here and now I'm sitting out here and I'm making, actual food. I
Yeah.
actually have time to make food, and that of course supports your body, but it supports the mind as well. It helps to keep us clear when
Uh,
we're not eating a bunch of junk. So,
uh-huh.
and it's just a great time to practice all these things. All these things are things that people say they want to do, but they don't have the time for, right? Like exercise, I want to start journaling, I want to start doing yoga, I want to start eating better. Well, that excuse is gone now. So now maybe it's time to, for a lot of us, some people are still working and, God bless them. But for a lot of us, there's no excuse. Time excuse is out the window.
Yeah. We've got the time. And so, and I'm wondering, I know you're teaching at least a couple different studios
Mm-hmm.
with the online function now that some of our
Absolutely.
studios are doing. So are you doing that? Do you do that there from your space right there? Is this what it's
Yeah.
like
So, I
when
mean,
people take your class? Yeah.
yes. What you see right here, I mean, I pull it back a little bit so you can see a little bit more for that,
Mhm.
doing the actual yoga class. But yeah, I mean, what you see here is basically how I do that. I mean, just through Zoom, and we've had classes with like, just a couple, like 7 or 8 people. We've had classes with like 15, 16, 17 people,
Yeah.
and it's just really great. I mean, number one, like I said, people don't even have to leave their home, right? You could just be at home, roll out of bed, and do that, and then you don't have to drive. And for some people, they're driving, 15, 20, 30 minutes to get to class. So that's pretty
Yeah.
nice. I mean, every morning when I normally go there during normal life, it was, 20 minutes or more to get to, each morning through traffic. So that's nice. But the other thing I think is cool about it is that, we actually are starting to get people in the classes that couldn't have come to the class if we were in a brick and mortar studio. Like
Yeah.
people that are living in Germany right now are attending classes,
Yeah. Yeah.
here in California, and that's only set to expand. So it's like realistically, we could actually have more reach
Yeah. For sure.
than would if you just had a little studio. So I mean that's cool to see that, and even for the personal training that I do, like I started doing that through online,
Yeah.
do the same stuff, and that works
That,
perfectly fine.
yeah.
And
Right.
again, like I've like long lost clients that have moved to Kansas or whatever, are now suddenly it's like, oh well, now we can, I always wanted to train with you again, but I live in Kansas and you live there, and so it's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
I'm right now I'm teaching the two studios that have switched to we're online studios now is what we're
Yeah.
calling it. We're entering the brave new world.
Oh yeah.
Free Spirit Yoga
Hmm.
in Long Beach. Well, I mean, we're all on the internet now, and then also Stella Luna Yoga. Both of these places I'm teaching
So is it, so
online.
we can put the links below in where we post videos, but so it's freespirityoga.com, and then is it stellalunayoga.com?
StellaLunaYoga.com. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
just this is the name.com, and
Great.
and the other side of it is that we get to do that, and it's just really been nice. I mean, everyone on there has been really, they've been like, wow, this is great, and really needed this now. So it's
Right.
nice to be able to do that. And even as a teacher, you asked about like what is it that helps me to stay grounded in this time, like
Ah,
teaching. Like
yeah.
actually, like one of the things, especially for people that have been doing this kind of work, it's like you're
Mm.
so used to doing that giving and to doing that,
Oh,
like being in that exchange of like giving some yoga and getting some gratitude, that you know to not have that can be very, it's like I just think it's helpful to the teacher as it is to the student, and it's
yes.
like both of us
Yes.
are getting our good juju from that, so that's nice.
Right. Such a good point. Yeah. Well, wow. I love just so much on how your perspectives help help our perspectives. Wow.
Well, we all gotta, this is the time, to me, this is the time that we decide, are we all gonna help each other? Are we all gonna like, really actually step into that? Um, because, I mean, like you said, there's the two forces, there's the up and the down and the wave. And so it's just to see like, are we gonna go up? Are we gonna use this as an instigator to actually, you know, remember what we're great, remember how, blessed we actually are. That's one of the things that we see is how many people are like, I saw someone the other day saying like, I can't wait to hear, well, hello, sir, may I take your order again? It's like the little, like just being able, and just, man, my favorite little restaurant, and not, I can still get the food takeout, but like, I wanted to sit there, so hopefully this will spur us to get some actual gratitude for those simple things again, and I think that's
Uh,
something we lost, just sitting around with friends at a restaurant and eating was kind of, again, it's like the serving thing. We did it so much and we had so much of it that maybe it lost a little bit of its luster. And maybe if we take that month or two off from all of our regular things, maybe we can come back out with that, beginner stoke, that deep appreciation again.
yeah, I love that. That's like such a great way to focus, and it feels good and it feels true with what we know about things like absence and gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we can
wow.
hope. So this is our chance. And I think that, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to, there's always going to be people out there that are trying to push in the wrong direction. So, it's up to each of us that recognizes this opportunity to actually do, even, like I said, even just those little things, even just making that post or doing that thing that pushes us more towards, unity and community and, stability, like being sustainable and being stable individually and as a society. And I think that, we're just at the beginning of this, and as we go, maybe we can see some of those mental shifts happening on a grander scale.
Mm, wow. I love that how you said unity and community, and there was one more word. Yeah.
Stability as well, and
Stability, that's what it is. Stability. Yeah, I remembered it for a second. Then yeah, right. And that just again, just having someone like you even putting it into words for us helps, I think, to just be like, oh yeah, okay, that's what we could focus on, right? Because I think there are so many people maybe who feel in despair and just are having a hard time having hope because they feel so grounded in maybe what seems to be true now and what is being told to us in the possibilities. So I just feel like it is powerful to have people
Yeah.
saying out loud, you know, things we could be focusing on, like those kinds of concepts, right? So unity, community, and stability, right?
Yeah, and it starts, it starts with the individual first, which is why we do our yoga on ourselves first. It starts with you having unity within your own embodiment. Like you ought to be there first, and then from there blooms out all that stuff. So, thank you as well, because you also, are doing this work, and, you're out there recognizing that this is the time to give that inspiration to do that. So I appreciate that you do that as well.
Well, thanks. I figure again, if people are out there soaking up content right now, it's awesome if we can be offering something that's, more enriching and enlightening and
Yeah, well,
and
I'm just trying
maybe
to help.
entertainment too.
Yeah, well,
It's
we
part
can
of
have
entertainment.
fun, but we can have plenty of fun, and that's a lot of what people actually need anyway.
Hmm.
Because right now, I mean, as it stands, most of us, realistically, we're not in. I mean, as long as we're staying in and everything, we're not in physical danger. So that, at this point in the quarantine type scenario, it's more, more of a mental danger, I would say, at this juncture. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's, fun. And this is another thing that hopefully we learned, that like fun and humor and the light side of life are not some frivolous, unnecessary extra stuff. They're essential, because
Uh,
life has different challenge and different. I mean, look what everyone's turning to now. Everyone's now listening to more music and reading more, looking at more art, and taking all
mm,
these things, like all these things that were deemed like, that's not math, that's not
wow.
useful, that's not, but you're not building anything. Now all of a sudden we start to realize that like that is, we need
Wow.
to have
That's
fun.
such a great point. Wow. That
Have
is our medicine
fun.
and that's why it's important, And
Yeah.
that's why we turn to it when we're in trauma or feeling troubled, right? And so,
And
yeah,
I'd
that it helps us
recommend not
to,
waiting until that, I mean, like don't wait
yeah.
till the forest is on fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like seek it out, and for those of us that can, put it out there, have some fun out there, and uh, encourage people, and inspire, and all that stuff, because, you know, we what else are we gonna do? That's the only way that we can help in a lot of scenarios, but it's enough, and it spreads.
Ah, it's important though. And I do love that that's totally, I would say, part of your brand is that you do share that you make it a point to have fun and that you appreciate when you've had fun, right? Like you do things like revel in your fun, like the great wave you just caught or the awesome Mexico trip you got to do, right? And that you, because you see that it is so essential that you're sharing, it's not frivolous, it's important to like have fun even within being of service, right? That you're a
Yeah,
great
well, and
model
even
of that.
and even in, the tough times, I mean, I mean, like a lot of people, we don't want to, we don't want to be flippant, and we don't want to like minimize, but at the same
Yeah.
time, when things are challenging and things do seem dark, like that is when we need the light, that is when we need to be light. You don't need a light if it's all light out, but this is so, yeah, we don't want to, be insensitive in our humor about these kind of situations, but we do need to have, we need to keep our spirits up if we're going to continue to make this, turn this into something that we can use.
Yes, yes, right. And I love that you remind us that fun is part of being in the light, right? It really is. It really is. Like
If
it's
you're
our
not having
modern
fun,
word for it. If it feels fun, it probably is you're being in your light, right? Or being on the
literally,
light side or whatever you people want to call
we
it.
call we call humor, another word for humor is levity, which
Ah,
literally means like it's like based off levitation. Like levity is, we call it, because it's that is enlightenment. Like
uh,
like like in order, like they're getting lighter, and we can feel that. Like we literally say like, oh, I feel heavy when we feel sad, and we feel lighter when we are having a good time, when we're having fun. And so it literally, I mean, like
mm,
we could say that the words right there, that the enlightenment is enjoyment in another way. It is to be lighter, to have more fun, to be, and I mean, you look at all the, all these people that are, have throughout history have been enlightened or whatever we might call it. And most of them are pretty funny. Most of them got jokes
Yeah.
because, once that's, you can't be light if you're feeling like a
Uh,
brick all the time.
right, right. Humor helps. Right? See,
There's just,
there's a joke right there.
and there's, I mean,
Humor.
there's all kinds of cool science based on that too. I mean, there's a lot of people that have shown that, like if you're going through like a medical thing and you're sitting around watching comedy movies all day and just laughing and having a great time, that actually physiologically, helps with healing. Like you actually have a better disease outcomes
Uh,
if you're sitting around, like having, like not necessarily always having a great time, but like watching funny stuff and taking in, fun.
yes.
So it is vital. And hopefully that's something that we learn through all this, that
Right. Well,
it's
and I
not
think
all
it's
just
important to bring
mechanical
up too, because I was having a conversation earlier about this idea of suffering, and that's something that feels so interesting right now, that we're so aware maybe of the suffering going on the planet, right? And so some of us might feel like guilty having fun while there's all this suffering going on the planet, right? So,
yeah.
or it might feel like, am I like spiritually bypassing? Am I not aware? Am I not, right? And so I think it seems important to bring up that that's helpful to allow for the fun, even though we're also aware of the suffering, right? It's like, and even in honor of that suffering, right? Like if we're in the privileged place to be able to do something that feels fun within our home right now, that isn't us disregarding the suffering, right? That it could be, it's an okay. Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting though? Do you hear me? Yeah, what
Yeah.
do you
I
think?
mean, I get what you're saying, but I mean, this is again a situation where we come back to where we began, which was talking about this, like this golden mean or this Goldilocks zone, that like in all these situations we can look and be like, yeah, well, we don't want to just be sad because things, we don't want to be just like spiritual bypassing and all that. So this is where, again, we always come back to this idea that like there's the right amount. There's the right
Yeah.
amount in the right time in the right way in which we can add humor and add fun in. And then there would be such a thing as too much, where like maybe we are bypassing, maybe we are
Yeah.
being a little disrespectful. But
Right.
there's such a thing as not enough. Like being too grave about the situation, being too
Uh,
serious can also lead to trouble. And I mean, these
mm,
are just, again, these are not spiritual, these are just practical things. We can see this if we actually observe
yeah.
how our own lives and how the, community life goes, that that's just how it works. That we need, that there's the right amount, and we need to apply that right amount. You know, it's like if I'm
Yeah.
thirsty, I don't need to drink a gallon of water. I don't need to not have water. I need to drink a reasonable amount of water,
Yes.
right? So we're all,
I
so to
love
me,
that
that's
analogy.
like, what's the right amount of fun? What's the right kind? You got to be mindful when we're putting that out there, because there's the
Right.
right amount.
Right. And what's the right amount of suffering? And I'm getting the drift that you mean probably that only you are going to know what's the right amount. Like I love that thirst
Yeah,
analogy that you offered, because that one we can really say only you are going to really be, even physically be able to feel when you've gotten enough water, if that's the analogy, right?
well,
So it
and
to
that's
me
the
the
whole
fun.
yoga too, right?
Uh,
And that's why I say the first thing, when you ask the first thing, I'm like, first thing is do your yoga, because when you use that yoga practice, like we said earlier, to feel for yourself in your own body
yeah.
where the right amount is in each pose, in each
Uh,
movement, each breath, then you start to tap into that intuition that tells you
uh,
what is the right amount of things outside of it. What's the right amount? Because again, like your body and the outside aren't scientifically different. So if we get
mm,
accustomed through this, then that ability can spread out, and then we can start to use that.
yeah.
So we
Ooh,
cultivate the ability for each individual cultivates his or her own ability to be sensitive to that right amount through the yoga practice. And that's why also the first thing, do your yoga. Because if you don't have that, then your gauge is all off. And if your
uh,
gauge is all off, then how are you, if your speedometer on your car doesn't work, I mean, you can kind of try to figure it out, but at the same time, you're probably going to get a lot of tickets or drive super slow. So,
right, right, right. Yeah, do. And I love to phrase that if yoga means union, right, then it could be just do your anything, do whatever it does that centers you, you know, and it usually involves the body too. And
Yeah.
that's going to really set you up to be in that center. And I love some of your terminology. It's so great. The Goldilocks zone and the golden path, right? Is that what you called it? The golden
Golden
average,
mean.
even?
So this
Ooh,
it's
yeah,
actually
some
a
great words.
it's an ancient it's like an old philosophical thing from back in like all the kind of like Greek Roman philosopher. They called it the golden mean, which is like the
Golden
golden
mean.
average. So they're saying like
Ooh,
there's
yeah.
some place in the middle of everything. It's not
Uh,
always right in the middle, right? Like
yeah.
it's I mean, but it's sometimes it's really close to one side or the other. But there's somewhere it's never the answer. Essentially, the answer is never found in the extremes. The answer is always found somewhere in the meat of the pie,
Mm,
so to speak. So I mean, and I just think that that's something that's so fundamental that if I again like if I'm not able to gauge that, then I'm going to be in
yeah.
trouble all the time.
Right,
I'm
right,
always
right.
going to be finding
Yeah.
myself in trouble and not know why. It's like if you're running a nuclear power plant, you want to be able to see if that gauge is in the green zone or if it's starting to creep up into the yellow and red zone. Because otherwise, things can go real bad real fast.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's what we could even say, like, that's the whole, what you're practicing, right? It's just how to be kind of constantly finding that place within your day, right? Or be, finding your flow within that, along the wave of life. Oh, it's so good. And on a
Well,
wave, the wave is so perfect with you.
even like you said, it could be. I mean, that's why it can be anything. Like for me, I practice on the mat. Like I said, like I train in the gym. But that finding a balance, again, you could practice that while you're just walking or while
Right.
you're doing
Yeah.
any activity. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot of it is about pace.
Yeah.
Like if I'm cooking dinner and I check in and I notice that I'm like in a rush, but there's no reason to be in a rush because I'm on quarantine and I have nothing else to do today, then maybe I slow down a bit.
Yeah.
And there's your now you're practicing yoga again in a
Yeah,
way.
exactly. That's your
You're
moment of yoga right there.
you're noticing you're noticing that you're going too high on the RPMs, and then you're lowering down
Yeah.
to the right amount. And
Yeah.
that whether it's in your body rep and whether it's cutting vegetables or whether it's like, oh, I'm driving but I'm not in a hurry and I'm still speeding, I'm going to slow down. Like anytime that we practice finding our golden mean, we're like
Yeah.
anything, we're strengthening that ability.
Oh,
Any amount
that
of any place that
easy.
you find it, um, really, yeah, I mean, anywhere that we can practice that is a good opportunity to practice. And I feel like pretty much every moment is a
Yes.
good opportunity to find that.
Ooh, yes. And then
So what
again, that shows us that right now is a beautiful time to practice, right? It turns out, even though it's intense as fuck, and
yeah,
and some of the hardest times a lot of people feel like they've seen potentially, right? For
yeah,
some,
well, this
and
will be
but it's a great time to practice, right? Deep
yeah,
practice time.
well, this will be, I mean, it's my opinion, and I think we're all starting to see this. I mean, this will be probably the major defining event of everyone alive currently. I mean, this is going to be it's going to be shifting and it's going to be big. And, I never, ever want to try to minimize and be flippant, and say like,
Yeah.
oh, this is all going to turn out groovy and we're all going to be like holding hands and like, no, there's going to be, in yoga, we could call it, this is going to be the Kali moment, where everything's
Um,
falling apart. And, I don't know if you're familiar with Kali, the Hindu deity Kali,
Somewhat,
which
yeah. And I know
is
about, like, yeah, go ahead though.
often depicted as being very fearsome. And it's like, it's the
Uh-huh.
kind of like, it's this idea that like again it's the wave, it's this idea that like things have to be broken apart in order for them to be put back in in order for us to put them back in a newer and better way, they first have to be broken apart. And that's so I don't ever want to like say that that's not like that is happening. There is
Yeah,
intense suffering around the world at this time,
right.
and
And
never want to minimize that.
yeah,
But um we can also help ourselves through this by realizing and recognizing that, um, it's after you have that big forest fire and then you start to see all that new growth come back. Like, yeah, there is the fire and it is a thing and it's true and it's, burns up, but it's always making way for new growth. It's always making way for every time the wave goes down, it comes back up. We have yet in scientific discovery found anything that waves up, goes down, and just keeps going down. It always hooks up,
uh,
hooks now. So, you know, I'm just having the fortitude and having that stability, that mental stability to ride through that, just remembering that, you know, it's all, we're just riding that wave. And, you know, be kind, be compassionate, care
that's
about
so
other
great.
people.
That
And
goes so well too with your brand, though, that we're all just riding this wave. I just had to point out.
it really is.
But so I'm noticing we have just a few minutes in case it is gonna. I need to find out if my Zoom shuts off at the hour point or set it.
All right, yeah,
But
well,
just in
let's
case it's gonna do that, let's make sure that you can say where people and how people can find you and follow what you're up to if they don't already know.
yeah, well, you know, like I said, the two places that I'm teaching group yoga classes right now
That's right.
are Stella Luna Yoga and Free Spirit Yoga. And, you know, you just go to either of those websites. We can put some links in the comments or whatever for
Right.
that.
Yeah, we will for sure.
But as far as me, like I said, I also do, I mean, I do private yoga. We can do personal training, fitness and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Great time to be doing that. You know, time is not an issue anymore. We're all at home, and you know, that you could just reach out to me. I mean, Facebook,
Okay.
Instagram. I mean, you can go to my website and look at my cheap little website, or you could just, you know, give me a call. My phone
Oh
number
yeah.
is all over
But
the
what
internet.
is your website? We might as well say that while we
My
have a minute.
website is cleverly named. It's Jonathan Neal Fitness. So, you know, it's
Okay.
just my name, fitness. But I
Cool.
mean, really, you know, find me on Facebook. Like, reach out.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to be high. You know, we can be
Yeah.
friends. You know,
Totally.
I encourage, let's connect. Let's really connect. And
Yay.
you know, but I really enjoy doing it. And I really think it's a great time. You know, whether it's yoga or fitness or both. You know, whether it's with me or with someone else. Like, please get on it. You know, this is your chance. So let's do this
Yes. Ah, well, thank you
thing.
so much, Jonathan. I knew that would be amazing. That was a great
Thank you very much. You kept it to 1 hour. How about
conversation.
that?
Yeah, right.
Good.
Totally awesome. So, well, and I'll, you know, I'd love to do this again soon. So
Yeah,
thank you
let's
so
do it
much.
again sometime.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, until we meet again, I hope you have a great day out there.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you doing this. And
um,
always,
so
Laura, it's
awesome.
wonderful to see you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, thank you all for being here. We'll see you
Bye bye,
guys soon.
everybody.
Bye, Jonathan. Namaste.
Namaste.